Thank you, Matthew, and good evening, everyone, and good evening to those of you online. The RSA was always about progress. It was created a stroll away from this house in Henrietta Street, Covent Garden, on March the 22nd, 1754, in Rothermel's Coffee House. At that first meeting, a group of noblemen, clergy, gentlemen, and merchants formed an association to offer prizes for technical advances. It was a society for the encouragement of arts, manufactures, and commerce, but it was always really a society for inventions that would make the world a better place. So I see our overriding objective here as fellows and custodians of the RSA in continuing the RSA's abiding mission of promoting invention in its various interpretations and incarnations as best we can. Now, why does invention matter so much? Well, Francis Bacon wisely stated over 400 years ago, the good effect wrought by founders of cities, land givers, fathers of people, extirpers of tyrants, and heroes of that class extend and exist for short periods of time, whereas the work of the inventor, though a thing of less pomp, circumstance, and show, is felt everywhere and lasts forever. In a way, that sums it up. Politicians, film stars, and other figures in public life come and go and are mostly forgotten. Their legacy is dust. But brilliant inventions, the products of men and women's minds, they endure. Now, invention matters because it changes lives for the better. It's the way that human ingenuity conquers a hostile world and makes it more bearable. Take air conditioning. I learned the importance of air conditioning in a humid climate when I helped establish a factory in Brunswick, Georgia, North America, about 15 years ago. Our firm took over a brand new plant with top-of-the-range cooling system, but no workers. Directly opposite stood a facility operated by a rival with 400 staff. The problem with the rival's factory was that it had no air conditioning. In the height of summer, it was a virtual furnace. We opened for business in July, and by August, half of our competitors' staff had walked across the road to come and work for us for the same wage because conditions in our building were just so much more pleasant. Air conditioning was truly one of the most important inventions of the 20th century. In 1902, Dr. Willis Carrier, an engineer just out of Cornell University earning just $10 a week, invented a mechanism he called process cooling for use in a printing plant in Brooklyn. Reputedly, he had his brainwave while waiting for his train on a cold, foggy night. He patented his apparatus for testing air 4 years later and kick-started an entire industry. Carrier employed a centrifugal system that used the evaporation of a refrigerant liquid to cool and dehumidify the environment. Now, Willis, Havel, and Carrier was a classic practical man of action. He said, "I fish only for edible fish and hunt only for edible game, even in the laboratory." Remarkably, the business he founded remains the world leader today, an 11 billion division of United Technologies Corporation. Not bad for a business incorporated in 1915 with a capital of just $35,000. Over the next few years, the air conditioning age started in earnest. It became the second fastest growing US industry after television. In 1952, there were 20 companies in the business. Just 2 years later, there were 92. By 1960, over 12% of American homes were air-conditioned, and 20 years later, the figures were 55%. The industry could not have grown so fast had it offered mere comfort. It caters to a pressing human need. Air conditioning spread from commercial buildings to houses and cars, trains and planes, allowing people to live, work, and travel comfortably in hot and cold weather. It's arguable that by pioneering and embracing air conditioning, America accelerated its economic development. It permitted more efficient, productive working and living conditions for tens of millions of citizens. The relative economic performance of the Deep South against America's Northeast accelerated noticeably following World War II and the widespread introduction of air conditioning. Indeed, many Southerners in America think that next to the Civil War, the most important event in history was the invention of air conditioning. Plenty believe India's growth would exceed China's if it could only get enough air conditioning working. And only this week, I read that Carrier's new Evergreen chiller is the world's most efficient non-ozone depleting water cooling chiller. No doubt the founder would be proud. Now, his spirit of invention is alive and well and thrives today in London. Last week, I spoke at a networking group of perhaps 100 young entrepreneurs in a nightclub off Carnaby Street. They design applications for the Apple iPhone, most of them working for themselves, living a dream of creating a business. Since its introduction, just over 2 years ago, over 2 billion applications have been downloaded for the iPhone, or a startling 196,000 downloads per hour, every hour, since apps were first introduced in July 2008. Many of us in business are coping with tough conditions during this downturn. But believe me, at that iPhone app gathering, it was boom time. The enthusiasm, vigor, and optimism that evening were truly infectious. I left feeling that the world does offer limitless possibilities. The audacity and electricity of those enterprising young men and women. It reminded me of Joseph Conrad, who said, "I remember my youth and the feeling that will never come back anymore, the feeling that I could last forever, outlast the sea, the earth, and all men." And that sense of adventure, a sense of discovery, a will to discover and achieve something positive, that matters. I really believe that retaining ultimate confidence in our capabilities as human beings is vital. We all need to keep that almost innocent faith that tomorrow will be a better day. In the long run, history has shown that the pessimists are always on the losing side. It's not just that they are depressing to be around. It's that they underestimate our resourcefulness. We should never be complacent. But those with a burning bright outlook have repeatedly been proved right. There are solutions to our many problems, and they rest in our ability to invent and successfully apply ourselves. I think this message can be self-fulfilling. If you expect your efforts to fail because of inevitable natural limits, then you will resign yourself to that happening. But if you recognize the possibility, or even the probability, of reaching your goals, then suddenly remarkable things can happen. As Teddy Roosevelt, one of my favorite American presidents, said, "Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in a grey twilight that knows not victory nor defeat." I've always seen the 3 pillars of the RSA as education, design, and enterprise. And I think they all combine in a magical way in the sphere of invention. An educated society is one that absorbs the extent and power of knowledge and can apply it in new ways. Because invention is really just a novel way of combining existing things, be they chemicals to make a new pharmaceutical drug or computer code to make a new software program. But you do need understanding of current technologies and instruments and processes of previous craft. And any innovative product or service must be well designed to function efficiently. And for such things to achieve widespread use in a capitalist system, then an enterprising individual or team must go about financing a business to mass produce, market, and distribute the new device. Of course, not all inventions are commercial undertakings. And the RSA, which is a charity, has sponsored many civic improvements that have simply benefited society as a whole, from the first art exhibition to the introduction of artistic copyright to today's opening mind school curriculum. For example, in 1761, it created the first industrial exhibition of inventions in London. A somewhat later, similar trade event was described thus: "All of the highest and best achievements of modern civilization, all that was strange, beautiful, artistic, and inspiring. A vast and wonderful university of the arts and sciences, teaching a noble lesson in history, art, science, discovery, and invention, designed to stimulate the youth of this and future generations to greater and more heroic endeavor. Rather grand objectives, but admirable nevertheless, and all credit for aiming high. At its heart, the RSA has always been pro-business and pro-technology, and that is why I agreed to chair the organization. Its founders believed in the future. They did not fear technology. They did not retreat from the new and the bold. They approached the world with curiosity and creativity, and we should perpetuate that tradition. All the challenges mankind faces, climate change, diminishing energy resources, food shortages, can be addressed if sufficient brain power is applied. And we also need to be rigorous rather than emotional, as when deciding on areas like GM foods. Because without them, it's my belief, the world is unlikely to ever feed itself. Invention requires rational rather than self-indulgent behavior. I'm proud to say that Britain abounds with successful inventors. Earlier this year, I was inspired to shake hands with Sir James Black, the only man in history to have introduced 2 blockbuster drugs. For ICI, he invented propranolol, the classic beta blocker, widely used for the treatment of heart failure. And for Wellcome, he synthesized cimetidine, better known as Zantac, used to treat stomach acid. His drugs have improved millions of lives, and for Britain's pharmaceutical industry, he created hundreds of millions of revenues and many, many jobs. He's a Nobel Prize winner, but is still extraordinarily active at 85, a remarkable testament to brain power and hard work. And he's living proof that Britain today is repeatedly capable of world-class invention, as is the fact that a few years ago, in Sandwich in Kent, 3 British scientists working for Pfizer filed a patent for sildenafil citrate, the most famous drug of modern times, better known as Viagra. However, Britain must improve its game in the inventing stakes. A recent comprehensive survey from Gallup suggested the single most important thing to people all around the world is getting a decent job. Indeed, I believe the most immediate threat to our well-being and society is the spectre of mass unemployment. There may be big issues on the horizon in the medium term, but for those millions out of work and their families, they face a crisis right now. And we cannot afford, as a nation, the waste of talent and resources that represents. Now, I do not believe that overall government public work schemes create long-term real jobs. What we need are more entrepreneurs and more inventors, building products and companies that can thrive in the wealth-creating sector, because that is the only way we can pay for our public deficits. That means encouraging fresh minds into science, technology, and engineering disciplines, and promoting role models among inventors and those who create jobs. It means unleashing entrepreneurs from the suffocating effects of over-regulation, state bureaucracy, and high taxation. And research and development must be championed at every level. And demonizing capitalism will not get us out of the slump. We should surely coax our economy away from an overdependence on financial services, I grant, and we should move towards areas like smart manufacture and high technology. And I think this whole effort will come as much through heroic figures like James Dyson and Tim Berners-Lee as through state spending. The RSA must be able to help with this cause in myriad ways. It's got 27,000 fellows who are among the brightest and most experienced in our country. Surely there are dozens of projects that could stimulate innovation, be it in new firms or social enterprises. One possible change the RSA should make, if it's to embrace invention more warmly, it should entice more young new fellows. For many innovators, their most fertile period of innovation is actually in their 20s and 30s, from Nobel Prize winners to entrepreneurs to composers. Many of the true breakthroughs are achieved when they are younger. As Francis Bacon said, young men are fitter to invent than to judge, fitter for execution than counsel, and fitter for new projects than settled business. Of course, the wisdom and experience of many fellows is a wonderful complement to the youthful exuberance of many inventors. And together, a partnership like that would be much stronger, I think, than either alone. But rather than speeches like this, or indeed articles in the RSA Journal, what is needed is action. In life, I've always found that actually doing something matters a great deal more than talking about it. And it's also ultimately more enjoyable, even if it's more work. Blogging, speaking, and such like can be tremendous substitutes, I find, for concrete action. I've always been a great fan of characters like Thomas Alva Edison, at heart a practical man. He said, the three great essentials to achieve anything worthwhile are first, hard work, second, stick-to-itiveness, and third, common sense. Dreaming's all very well, but what's needed more than anything is application. I've spent the last 20 years or so starting and backing business projects, everything from restaurants to publishing to healthcare. Clearly, the point is to grow things and make a profit, but it can also be about seizing an opportunity, proving a point, or because you feel it must be done. It can be about fulfilling your destiny, competing with rivals, or maybe just showing off. But whatever your motivation, life is more exciting if you can adopt a great or even a modest cause. It all involves risk and the danger of failure. But making mistakes and understanding the importance of trial and error, that's what I call progress. Neurotic risk aversion will not solve the challenges we face. One of the most fatuous philosophies I hear too often these days is the precautionary principle, which holds that those who would carry out actions that might conceivably cause harm must prove that no such harm will occur. This idea relieves critics and worriers of the burden of proof and places it on those who would seek change and renewal. Buck passers and procrastinators use it as an excuse to do nothing for fear that it might not work and that there might be some collateral damage. Somehow I suspect the founders of the RSA would have laughed at the very notion of the precautionary principle. Some of what I've done in my work has been simply carrying on something existing. Some things have been original. I've found that not all innovations are breakthroughs that destroy the status quo. Many are gradual evolutions of existing operations, pursuing what the Japanese call kaizen, continuous, never-ending improvements. The key point is to keep moving and stay restless. Or as Steve Jobs said in his address to Stanford, stay hungry, stay foolish. The former because you keep looking, the latter because you keep curious. Now, curiously, downturns are fertile times for innovation. In the depths of the Great Depression in the 1930s, Walt Disney launched his eponymous animation company, now the largest entertainment organization in the world. And Wallace Carothers of DuPont first formulated nylon. Texas Instruments marketed the world's first transistor radio in 1953 during a recession. Hewlett-Packard invested in the development of the pocket calculator during the 1969-70 recession. And Bill Gates started Microsoft in 1975 in a motel room in Albuquerque while the US battled stagflation and the after effects of the oil crisis. I too have launched a business in a recession. With partners, I started Strada, a wood-fired pizzeria, in the months immediately following 9/11, when the mood was very downbeat. And our first branch was actually a flop, and it was only with the second and third openings that we realized we had a winner on our hands. And today that business has 50 branches. But why would an economic downturn be a good time to start up a new undertaking and launch a new invention? There are a number of reasons. Firstly, the established players are probably too distracted with legacy problems, debt perhaps, or pension deficits, or lease obligations, or high fixed costs. They will not have the resources to react aggressively to newcomers. And when the world is hesitant, a bold new operator can seize opportunities that would not normally be available. In the autumn of 1992, I took control with Pizza Express with partners. It was a fabulous brand with huge goodwill and enormous potential even then. At the time, I was a 30-year-old with a bank overdraft. But thanks to the downturn in the early 90s, the company had some problems, and I was able to put together a consortium to solve the difficulties. And thanks to that downturn, when we started to expand, we found the economy was welcoming us because we had attractive premises at good rents. And unquestionably, the same sort of opportunities are occurring now. And I've also noticed that there is a wonderful array of people talent out there. While some are cautious about changing roles, others sense the dramatic cyclical and structural shifts underway in many industries require change. They're looking for work and are more flexible about the type of company that they'll join and the terms they'll accept. This means as an employer you can hire better staff and they're more likely to be loyal. Now, the pace of invention over recent years has absolutely not slackened. In just the last 20 years, we've seen the emergence of mobile telephony, DNA sequencing, and of course, the internet. This latter device may yet prove to be the most powerful engine for innovation ever. In time, all the world's research will be stored and widely disseminated online, accessible to every scientist or technologist anywhere, anytime. With such unprecedented sharing of ideas and information, there can be no limit to the end results. Quite probably, the era of the lone inventor, the Nikola Tesla figure, is drawing to a close. But the strength of networks and teams is only just coming to the fore. Now, markets have had a bad press lately, and they are by no means perfect. But I still reckon they're the best system we have. And markets are actually wonderful mechanisms for stimulating invention. As shortages arise, so prices climb. And higher prices represent opportunities that attract profit-minded entrepreneurs and socially-minded inventors to seek new ways to satisfy the shortages. Some fail, mainly at a cost to themselves. But a few succeed, and the final result is that we frequently end up better off than if the original problem had never arisen. So, for example, I have complete confidence that massively more powerful electric batteries that are cheaper and less polluting will be available in a few years and thereby rapidly accelerate the use of electric and hybrid cars, reducing our dependence on imported fossil fuels. It seems this is an era where we worry about many things: conflicts, crime, disease, inequality, and so on. But a study of history suggests that we live in an era of remarkable abundance, of longer, healthier lifespans, and greater peace than ever before. And thanks to communications and technical advances, I think these trends are likely to continue. Be it the eradication of illnesses, the productivity of agriculture, or the steady spread of higher standards of living in ex-communist countries, there are grounds to believe that mankind's ability to adapt and learn will keep delivering the goods. There will always be temporary shortages and panics, natural calamities and strife. But I suspect we take too much for granted the extraordinary benefits we enjoy from past efforts to improve our lot. I believe that democracy and industrial capitalism spur invention, and together this combination promotes freedom and well-being. The Royal Society of Arts must play its part in driving this agenda through its projects, its excellent staff, its communications, and its fellows. And with enough engagement and working together, anything is possible. Thank you very much.